Hey guys, tonight we journey deep into the mountains, where the wind carries not just snowflakes but warnings. You've heard of Santa Claus, of course jolly old Saint Nick with his sack of gifts and belly full of laughter. But here in the darker corners of the world, he's never been alone. Somewhere just behind him, in the shadows between traditions, something else walks. Something older, something with horns, hooves, and a sack of its own. It's the middle of winter, and the snow falls like ash. A quiet, muffled hush settles over a remote alpine village. Chimneys breathe out curls of smoke, and the soft crunch of your boots is the only sound you hear. The houses are old, wooden. Each one leans just a little too much, as if bowing to something. You've been invited to stay the night, and of course you accepted. Because you're curious, right? Even though the invitation came with a warning scrawled at the bottom of the note, stay inside, lock the door. If you hear bells, don't look outside. You probably wouldn't make it out of this one if you're not careful. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing where all of you are tuning in. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. There's a flicker in the fireplace, and the shadows stretch just a little too long. The villagers call him many names: Krampus, Necked Ruprecht, Bartlebutt. They all whisper them the same way, carefully, like the name itself might summon a shape from the trees. They say Krampus comes when the snow piles high and the night settles deep. You don't see him until it's too late. You might hear the drag of his chain through the frost, or the click of hooves across your rooftop, or the jingle of a bell. Not a happy bell, not a sleigh bell, a warning bell. According to tradition, Krampus is a horned, bestial figure often depicted with goat legs, black or matted fur, a lolling tongue, and curved horns. His eyes glow red. His mouth twists into something too wide, and in one clawed hand he holds a bundle of birch sticks, in the other, a sack. Not for toys. For you wander deeper into the town. Something about this place feels suspended in time. The air is too still. The snow crunches, but doesn't echo. There are no animals in sight, no birds, no dogs barking. Just rows of shuttered windows and faint candlelight. And then you see it, a hand-carved wooden figure standing at a street corner, about your height, shaped like a goat but upright. In its mouth is a note, yellowed by time. You pull it free. He doesn't come for all children, only the ones who doubt. You look around. Who left that? The lore of Krampus stretches back to pre-Christian times, likely rooted in pagan winter solstice traditions. Before he was the demon of Christmas nightmares, he was part of older, wilder midwinter rites, where spirits were chaotic, the veil between worlds thin, and the cold a force to be appeased. When Christianity spread through the alpine regions, rather than banish Krampus, they absorbed him. He became the twisted companion of Saint Nicholas. While the saint rewarded good children, Krampus handled the rest. Because not every child is good, and not every punishment is fair. Modern ears sometimes laugh off the legend. A scary goat man for misbehaving kids? Sure, sounds like a festive spook story. But those who've lived in these mountain towns, the longest, whose grandparents and great-grandparents told them to put their boots out on December 5th, to stay inside after sunset, to never follow bells into the snow, they don't laugh. They hang sprigs of birch above their doors. They sweep the chimneys. They close every window tight. And on Krampusnacht the night Krampus walks, they leave one candle burning, just in case. You turn a corner and find a door left ajar. A flickering candle sits just inside, its wax pooled and dripping onto the floor. There are no footprints in the snow before it. But behind it, two long, heavy imprints like hooves drag sideways vanish into the dark woods beyond the town. And somewhere, far off, you hear it. A bell. Just one. Not jingling. Clanging. Like a warning. Already too late. You step back from the door, heart thudding just a little too loud in your ears. That bell, was it real? Or just a trick of the wind? Either way, you suddenly notice how far you've walked from the center of town. The warmth of the firelight from those crooked houses feels miles behind you now. You turn to retrace your steps, but the snow has already filled in your footprints. It's said that the first tales of Krampus weren't told at all, they were drawn. Scratched into wood, painted on cave walls, carved onto bells and talismans. Goat-headed beings with long, lashing tongues and baskets slung over their backs. The earliest version of Krampus might have been more beast than man, a spirit of winter itself untamed, unbargained with, meant to scare children into staying indoors during the most dangerous time of year. Because if you wandered into the woods when the blizzards came, well, you weren't the only thing out there. Some alpine villagers believed he lived under the mountain deep in caves filled with rattling chains and old bones, lit only by the glow of embers in the snow. When the first frost came, they said he stirred, but he wouldn't come right away. Krampus likes to wait. He watches, he listens, and he marks the names of those who lie, cheat, and hit their siblings, but also the quiet ones, the sneaky ones, the children who say nothing but think everything. Those are the ones he keeps closest on his list. There's a darker version of the legend passed down in Tyrol, Austria. In it, Krampus doesn't work with St. Nicholas hunts before him. He clears the path. He purifies the towns, so that only the good ones are left for the saint to visit. They say Krampus walks the snow-covered paths at twilight, peeking into windows, not breaking in, not yet, just watching. He counts how many boots are left out by the fireplace, and which ones are suspiciously empty. You make it back to the square. Barely. The houses seem quieter now. The candles in the windows have burned lower. There's frost curling in delicate, lace-like patterns across the glass. You glance toward the woods again. Those hoofprints are gone now, swallowed by the snow. But for a moment, you imagine something staring back from just beyond the tree line. Tall, bent forward, tongue flickering between long, yellow teeth. Not all depictions of Krampus are monstrous. Some, strangely, show him smiling, not in joy, but in satisfaction. Because Krampus doesn't punish out of hatred, he doesn't chase out of rage. He corrects, he enforces, he's not chaos, he's balance. A local version in Bavaria says Krampus once came to a town where every child claimed to be good. Not one boot went empty, not one door had coal. It was, on paper, perfect. So Krampus sat in the square and waited. 3 nights later, a child snuck out to spy on him. She wanted proof he wasn't real. Her boot was found the next morning. Still warm, still full, but the child was never seen again. And now, every Krampus knocked in that town, her name is read aloud just after sunset. Not in fear, in apology. You walk back to your guest room, your footsteps muffled by the thick, pillowy snow. Inside, the fire crackles low. A cup of tea sits waiting on the windowsill. Did you leave that there? You don't remember, but something about it smells like cinnamon and birch. And just as you turn away, a single tap at the window. You look. Nothing. Just your reflection. But in the glass, you notice your eyes aren't quite your own. Just for a second. And then, normal again. You sit, suddenly aware of the silence. It's not peaceful. It's loaded. Like someone else is holding their breath in the same room. You glance at your boots by the hearth. One is standing straight. The other, tilted ever so slightly, almost as if something had just stepped out of it. So you curl under the blanket, the fire burning low, the wind howling faintly beyond the glass. And just before sleep claims you, you hear it again. Faint, muffled, a bell, no closer than before, but no farther either. Sleep doesn't come easy, not when the air hums like a taut wire, and the shadows lean just a little too far into the room. You shift under the blanket, trying to convince yourself it's just the mountain wind outside. But it isn't. Because the bell, it hasn't stopped. It's not ringing constantly. No, that would be too simple. It chimes every so often, irregular, offbeat, like the echo of a memory trying to find its place again. And between those soft clangs, you hear another sound. Breathing. Not yours. You try to focus on something else. Anything else. Maybe a story to lull yourself into sleep. One that explains how this strange creature came to be. In the legend passed down through Carinthia, Krampus wasn't always feared. He was a child once, born of a forest goddess and a demon of the underworld, raised by the woods, taught by the shadows. He grew up wild and fanged, until the snows came, and the villagers grew afraid. So they chained him, tamed him, made him a servant of St. Nicholas. But chains rust, and obedience fades. Some say Krampus still remembers what it was like before the rules, before the feast days, before the masks and costumes and tidy parades. He remembers the freedom. You shift again in bed, listening to the fire crackle. The tea has gone cold. You didn't drink it. You're not sure you should. Something about the way the cup is angled feels deliberate, staged, and then it hits you. The boots? You'd kick them off randomly when you first arrived, exhausted and numb. Now they're perfectly side by side, pointed toward the door. In older versions of the Krampus tale, particularly from Slovenia, the creature doesn't punish children directly. He visits them, sits beside their beds. Not to hurt them, but to stare, to memorize the scent of guilt, to learn what a liar looks like up close, to wait until the moment when punishment becomes a lesson, and only then does he act. But if the child wakes, he vanishes, leaving behind only a tuft of dark fur on the pillow. You glance around the room now, slow and cautious. The fire flickers low, throwing odd shapes on the wooden beams overhead. And in one of those flickers, for the briefest moment, the flame bends backward like it's being pulled, drawn towards something cold just outside your vision. You don't turn. Not yet. There's a lesser-known piece of Krampus lore from northern Italy. In it, children used to place dried oranges on their windowsills to keep Krampus away. Not because he disliked oranges, but because he once craved them. In this tale, Krampus is cursed with a hunger he can never satisfy. The oranges were a peace offering. If he ate them, he would pass by. If he didn't, someone was taken. You look toward your window. Nothing there. But in the faint outline of frost, you see a circular smear like someone pressed an object to the glass. A fruit, maybe, or a face. Krampus's sack, according to some legends, isn't just for dragging children into the woods. It's a prison of time. Those taken don't die. They vanish, held in a kind of frozen slumber until the next Krampusnacht, when their names are whispered again by someone who remembers them. Only then can they come back. If no one remembers, they remain in the sack, forever, unaged, unspoken. The candle you left burning on the bedside table suddenly gutters low, not out but uncertain. And then, 3 knocks. Not at the door, not on the window, but from beneath the bed. You freeze. You wait. You count to 10 in your head, and then you lean over the edge, slowly, breath catching in your throat. You look. Nothing. Just cold floorboards. But when you sit back up, there's something in your lap. A lump of coal. Still warm. You stare at it, heart thudding, skin prickling. You know what it means. You've been marked. Maybe for a lesson. Maybe for something else. Outside, the wind picks up again, but it doesn't howl. It laughs, low and scraping, like bark on bark, like hooves on slate. And somewhere far off, closer than before, the bell rings once more. The coal sits in your lap like a silent confession. Its small could fit neatly in the center of your palm, but heavy, heavier than it should be. And even though the fire has gone dim, the coal is still warm, almost hot. You don't want to touch it again, but you do. You have to. The moment your fingers brush its surface, a jolt runs up your arm, not pain, not heat, but memory. Someone else's memory. A snow-covered field, a child's laughter, then silence, and the deep, guttural sound of breathing that isn't yours. You drop the coal. It doesn't roll. It just sits, waiting. Back in the alpine villages, coal was more than just a symbol of naughtiness. It was a mark of attention. If Krampus left you a piece, it meant he'd considered your name. You weren't punished yet, but you weren't ignored either. It was a warning wrapped in warmth, the same warmth used to lure prey. You rise from the bed, scanning the room. You half expect your boots to be gone, or for your reflection in the mirror to be facing the wrong way. But everything looks normal, almost too normal. That's how you know. He's close. In certain parts of Bavaria, there's a custom not often shared with outsiders. On the night of Krampusnacht, parents would place small offerings at their children's windows, fruit, bread, or old toys. But the children weren't supposed to know, because if a child asked about the gift, or touched it too soon, it would be taken away and they'd receive something else instead. A knock at the window, or a bell in the snow. You walk to the window and gently draw back the curtain. The frost has grown thicker now, branching into sharp, spidery veins. You wipe a small circle clear with your sleeve. Outside, the snow has stopped falling, but the wind moves in spirals, like something pacing. You squint. There between two crooked penises, a figure. Still, tall, not approaching, just watching. Krampus has never been known to rush. His hunts are slow, inevitable, cold in every sense. Because Krampus doesn't chase you through the woods, he waits in the clearing you'll eventually stumble into. He doesn't break down doors. He waits for them to be left ajar. He doesn't scream. He listens. And when he's sure you're alone truly, fully alone, then comes the chain, the birch, the sack. You step away from the window. Something shifts behind the curtain, just for a second, like wind catching the fabric. But the window's closed, isn't it? You glance again. The latch has been turned. Not all the way, but enough. There's a version of Krampus from Eastern Europe, known as Krampenhunde, snatching hound. In this telling, he's smaller, more nimble, faster. He slips under beds, hides in chimneys, waits inside wardrobes. Parents used to sprinkle flour by their children's doors at night, hoping to catch paw prints. Sometimes they did, but those homes were usually the quietest in the morning. Not from peace, from absence. The coal on the floor cracks. Just once. A dry, brittle sound. You lean closer and see it split in two, revealing something inside. Not flame, not ember. A sliver of something red. It looks like a tongue. You recoil. But it's gone now. The coal is whole again. Unburned. Unmoved. Like it never broke at all. The stories say Krampus knows when you doubt him. He lingers longer for skeptics, not out of vengeance, but curiosity. Because when belief finally cracks open in someone like that, it's a louder sound than any scream. And Krampus loves a loud arrival. Suddenly, the bells ring again. Not far now, right outside the window. And this time, it isn't just one. It's several. Clanging, distant but growing, like a parade in reverse. And then, something softer. Wood creaking. Your floorboards. You turn slowly, every hair on your body alert. The door to your room is cracked open. Just a sliver. You're sure you closed it earlier. A breeze sighs in. But it's not cold. It's warm, like breath. You walk to the door, slowly now. Not to open it further, but to close it. You place your palm gently against the wood and feel a heartbeat. Not yours. On the other side of the door, something waits. Tall. Patient. Smiling. You close your eyes and press the latch. Click. The heartbeat stops. The bells do not. The latch clicks into place, and the heartbeat behind the door vanishes like it was never there. But the quiet that follows isn't comforting. It's aware, like the room is holding its breath, like something just took a step back, not in retreat but to wait. Krampus, they say, doesn't need to break in. He needs permission. In the folk traditions of Tyrolean villages, Krampus is bound by ancient rule she cannot enter a home unless invited. But the invitation doesn't have to be spoken. It can be a door left ajar, a candle burned out too soon, a child who dares the wind to take them, or a guest who stares too long at the window. You step back, unsure whether to sit or keep standing. The coal is still on the floor. The fire has dwindled into a sullen glow, throwing crooked shadows across the walls. You feel them stretching again longer than they should, bending like they're leaning towards something unseen. You pick up the coal. You don't want to, but you do. The warmth is gone. Now it's cold, dense, and dry, like old bone. Your fingertips tingle. The bell outside rings again, just once. This time, it's close enough to rattle the window pane. Long ago, in a village not far from here, there was a woman who refused to celebrate Krampusnacht. She called it superstition, backward nonsense. When the children paraded through town in horned masks and bells, she shut her shutters, blew out her candles, went to sleep early. They found her boots by the fire the next morning, one filled with ash, the other with a broken antler. She was never seen again. But every year since, the children leave her name etched into the ice on the fountain. Not as a warning. As a reminder, you move to the fire and add a log, hoping the crackle will chase away whatever is stretching out in the dark. But the flame hesitates, flickering weakly. Krampus doesn't fear fire. He's from it, forged in it, born of hearth smoke and midwinter storm. In fact, in older depictions, Krampus would carry embers in his basket, spreading them to homes where he found lies, cruelty, or broken promises. Not to burn them down, just to leave a scar. A faint scratching comes from under the floorboards. You freeze. It's not frantic, it's deliberate, like claws dragging gently, back and forth. Then a whisper, so soft it's hard to tell if it's in the room or in your own mind. One boot empty, one filled. You glance toward the hearth. Both your boots sit there again, but now one is filled. With something black and curled. A twist of rope? A lock of hair? You don't check. You can't. In some Slavic traditions, Krampus carries a ledger not of names, but of dreams. Broken ones, cruel ones, nightmares whispered too many nights in a row. Children were told to confess their bad thoughts before bed, not to God, but to the wind so Krampus wouldn't collect them. Because when he knows your fears, he doesn't just punish you. He mirrors you, becomes the exact shape of what unsettles you most, and follows it, all the way in. You suddenly remember something strange. When you arrived, the innkeeper handed you a key, a small, tarnished brass thing, but it didn't unlock your room. It unlocked a drawer in the nightstand. You hadn't checked it yet. You cross the room slowly, crouch, and insert the key. The drawer opens with a creak that sounds too much like a sigh. Inside is a postcard, handwritten in a trembling scrawl. If you hear the bell, don't answer. If he leaves you coal, don't burn it. If you see the sack, don't run. Just kneel. Beneath that is a single item, a small wooden mask. Red paint. Curved horns. Too small for your face, but heavy as stone. You leave it in the drawer. Some believe Krampus marks potential apprentices, not out of malice, but need. There must always be someone to remind the world that consequences still exist, that behavior matters, that fear has shape. They say those chosen feel drawn to firelight in winter. They feel the bells before they hear them. They see children's shadows move when the children themselves do not. And when they sleep, they dream of horns. The wind picks up again. The flames dim once more. And outside, faintly, you hear laughter. Not joyous, not cruel, just satisfied. Like something very old is checking a name off a very long list. And moving on. The laughter fades, curling into the wind like smoke off a dying fire. You stand perfectly still, heart tapping out a rhythm you're not sure you can keep up with. The room is quiet again. Too quiet. Not the kind of silence that soothes, but the kind that listens. Your boots remain by the hearth. The coal hasn't moved. But the mask? It's no longer in the drawer. You didn't touch it. You're sure of that. But now it sits neatly on your pillow, facing the ceiling. Its red paint glistens slightly, like it's sweating. Krampus, in some rare versions of the tale, is said to leave masks behind not as trophies, but as invitations. The children he doesn't punish, he tests. Those who ignore the mask find their dreams change. They stop remembering them, stop dreaming altogether. And then, one night, they vanish. Gone without a struggle, no signs. Just a single hoofprint burned into the floor beside the bed. Those who wear the mask, they stop being afraid and start enjoying the dark. You back away from the bed slowly, careful not to disturb the mask. You wonder what would happen if you picked it up, just touched it. Would it whisper something to you? Would it know you? Your breath fogs in the air again. The room's temperature has dropped, even though the fire still burns. You can feel the cold coming from the walls, like something just passed through them, or is waiting on the other side. In the more theatrical, Krampusnacht traditions, especially in Salzburg towns, people dress as the beast in elaborate costumes, long horns, clanging chains, bells ringing wildly as they run through the streets. It's become a parade, a pageant, even a party, but not for everyone, because locals know the truth. Not all of the Krampuses in the parade are actors. Each year, there's one they don't recognize, a costume too perfect, a mask that doesn't come off, a bell that sounds wrong, and afterward, someone's missing, always just one. You step into the hallway now, pulled by a feeling you can't explain. The inn is still, the lights dim, your footsteps echo as if the building is hollow. You turn a corner and find the staircase leading down to the lobby. At the top step, a piece of parchment waits. You pick it up. It reads, "He is not the enemy of joy. He is the reminder of responsibility." You fold it, slowly, and from below, a bell rings. Not distant this time, not from outside. From the lobby, you descend carefully, foot by foot. The stairs creak, but no louder than usual, until the third step from the bottom. There, the wood moans beneath you low and strained, like something breathing in just below the floor. You pause. Listen. Silence again. And then, a single, deliberate thud from somewhere in the lobby. In some legends, Krampus doesn't show up as a beast at all. He takes the form of someone familiara, parent, a teacher, a neighbor only slightly off. A voice that stutters where it never used to. A smile that doesn't quite touch the eyes. A gift offered with one hand, while the other is reaching for something else. People say he blends in until Krampusnacht, and then the mask falls away. But by then, he's already made his choice. You step into the lobby. The fire there has burned out. The air is thick and heavy, like it's been sitting untouched for centuries. On the front desk is another item. A small bundle of birch sticks, tied with a red ribbon. You approach. There's a tag on it, like a gift. Your name, written in looping script that trails off at the end, as though whoever wrote it was interrupted. Or taken. The birch sticks aren't just a symbol of punishment. In Norse tradition, birch was used in cleansing rituals, to sweep out evil, to awaken slumbering spirits. It's believed that Krampus uses them not just to strike, but to mark, to awaken fear, to stir guilt, to remind. The bell rings again closer this time, right behind you. You turn, fast. No one's there, but your reflection stares back from the mirror across the lobby. Only, your eyes are glowing, just faintly, just for a moment, and then normal again. You grab the birch bundle and return to your room. You lock the door, you check it twice, and when you turn to your bed, the mask is gone. But in its place, another bundle of birch, this one smoldering. Just the faintest tendrils of smoke rising from the twigs. The fire in the hearth roars up without warning. Outside, the bells begin again, but now, they're circling, as if the parade has arrived, and you're the grand finale. The bells grow louder, swelling in number and rhythm like an ancient procession winding its way through the village. Except this isn't a parade you'd watch from the sidewalk. This is a hunt, and you're no longer sure which side of the door is safer. Krampusnacht, December 5th, the night before the feast of St. Nicholas. It's said that's when the veil between the living and the forgotten grows thinnest. While Nicholas brings rewards, Krampus brings reckoning. This isn't just folklore to alpine towns. It's weather, a seasonal shift in behavior, in tradition, in memory. Every old house holds the echoes of footsteps past midnight. Every attic has at least one dusty bell, a forgotten birch switch, or a child's shoe with a name carved into the sole. Because every family has their story. Some tell them with nervous laughter. Others don't tell them at all. You sit on the edge of the bed, the smoldering birch bundle on the floor before you. No flames, just smoke curling upward like fingers trying to write a message in the air. The window rattles. The door handle trembles. The walls hum. You're being surrounded. Not by people, not even by footsteps, by attention. And that's the part no one warns you about. Krampus doesn't just find you. He focuses on you. In certain regions of Hungary, they speak of Krampusarnith, wings of Krampus. They say that before the creature appears, a black fog rolls into the village. But it's not smoke, it's something alive. A spreading presence that slips under doors, through chimneys, into dreams. Once it touches you, it knows you. It doesn't matter where you go. You've been tagged. And from then on, you'll always hear the bells, even in summer, even in the sun. The fire flickers violently, casting shapes on the walls that don't match the furniture. One shape a tall, hunched figure with curling horn slingers longer than the others. You blink. It's gone. You look toward the mask. It's back. Resting on the nightstand this time. You don't remember hearing it move, but there it is. Wider smile than before, as if it knows something you don't. There's a version of the legend from rural Switzerland that says Krampus travels with a book. Not a list, a diary. Each entry is handwritten, observational. Lied about the bread, broke a promise and didn't apologize. Laughed when the dog cried. He doesn't punish evil. He punishes cruelty, especially the small, sneaky kind. The ones you think no one notices. Outside, the bells slow their rhythm. They're no longer circling. They're stationary, right outside the inn. And that's somehow worse. Like they've taken root. Like they're waiting for you to open the door. You glance at the birch bundle again, its ember gold center pulsing like a heartbeat. You remember the note. If he leaves you cold, don't burn it. But no one said anything about birch. So you pick it up. It's hot, but you don't drop it this time. Instead, you set it in the heart. The flames respond immediately. They rise up like a scream, orange and high and wild. And in that moment, the bells stop. The silence that follows is not relief. It's decision, like something has watched your action and filed it away. Another story from the Alpine valleys tells of the mirror test. It's said that during Krampusnacht, you should never look into a mirror after midnight, because Krampus walks backwards, through mirrors. And if your reflection moves differently even by a breath you've already been chosen, you can't undo the choosing. You can only survive it. You stare at the small oval mirror across from the bed. It hasn't moved. You walk to it slowly, breath shallow. And there, just as you feared, your reflection blinks half a second after you do, and then smiles. Wide. Too wide. The horns aren't behind you. They're on you. You turn away fast. But in the mirror, you're still facing it. Watching. Waiting. The fire dies down again. The room feels smaller, like the walls are bending inward, not creaking from the cold but tightening. Outside, you hear a child's voice. Laughter. Then silence. Then a whisper. It says your name. Once. Soft. Like a bedtime song. Then a knock at the door. 3 taps. Slow. Measured. Not a demand. An invitation. 3 knocks. Not the impatient pounding of someone in danger. Not the wild drumming of wind against old wood. These knocks are careful. Calculated, like someone or something wants to see how you'll react. You don't move. Not yet. You listen. And behind that thin strip of old timber, there's nothing. No breath. No footfall. Just anticipation. In the Tyrolean lowlands, there's an old story they don't tell children until they're almost too old to believe it. They say Krampus sometimes travels with companions small, silent ones called Gronkel, twisted little creatures made of sticks and ash, with eyes like cinders and no mouths. They don't speak, they stare. Their job? To watch the hesitation. The longer you wait after hearing a knock, the more of them there will be. Waiting in corners, under the bed, at the foot of the stairs. Some say if you open the door too soon, you invite them all in. If you wait too long, you invite what's behind them. You step back from the door, the knock still echoing in your ribs. Your reflection in the mirror hasn't turned away yet. It still stares, one hand raised palm flat to the glass like it's begging to be let through. But you're not going near it now. Not again. You turn to the fireplace. The birch bundle is gone. Not burned missing. Vanished without ash, without smoke, just like the mask and the key and... You glance toward your bag. The zipper is halfway open. You didn't unpack. You didn't even touch it since you arrived. But now, the zipper yawns like a crooked smile. There's a theory, shared in a few obscure northern villages, that Krampus doesn't leave the woods at all. He doesn't need to. He uses doors that were never built by human hands, knocks that were never learned, keys that were never forged. And once you're marked by him, whether by coal, birch, or bellew, begin to see the seams in reality, the little cracks in the walls where shadow seeps through, the way mirrors sometimes reflect things you haven't done yet. It's not magic. It's permission. He waits for you to notice. And once you do, you're part of the story. The knock comes again, but this time, not from the door. It's from behind you. You spin fast. Nothing. But the window's open just a sliver. The latch you double-checked earlier is now turned sideways, angled like a question. And there, nestled on the windowsill, is a bell. Small, old, blackened by soot, a red thread loops through its handle. You step forward carefully. The air near the window is warmer than the rest of the room, as if something just passed through. You pick up the bell. It doesn't ring. It doesn't have to. It vibrates, faintly, like a heartbeat, like it's alive. Some legends say if you ever find Krampus's bell, you're owed one answer. One question that the spirit must answer honestly. But the price is steep. You'll forget something else. Something important. You consider it for a moment. Would you trade a memory for the truth? Isn't that what we do every day anyway? You hold the bell to your ear. And a voice, your own voice, but older, whispers something. You don't understand the words, but you feel them. A cold clarity in your chest, like realizing you've been dreaming for years and just now woke up. The mirror behind you shatters. Just the mirror. The glass doesn't fall. It floats in the air, suspended like glitter caught mid-breath. Then it folds inward, disappearing into the wall. A soft pop, like a bubble bursting. And in its place, a new reflection emerges. A forest, at night, and something walking through it. Hooves, a sack, chains, and bells. Back in the room, the fireplace flares one last time and then dies completely. No smoke, no ember, just silence. Except now the door opens, slowly, on its own, no rush, just wide enough for someone to pass through. And standing there, backlit by nothing, framed by absence, is a silhouette. You can't see its face, but you know. You always knew. Krampus doesn't speak. He waits to see what you'll do next. Because this is the test. In a remote stretch of the Alps, there's a belief that Krampus doesn't choose at random. He selects those at a crossroads. People who've done one wrong thing they've never forgiven themselves for. People who've been almost good, but not quite. He watches the moment they decide which direction to go. Not physically, spiritually. And then he acts. Not to punish, but to guide. With fear, with fire. And with memory, you stand there, the bell in your hand. One step toward the door, one step back into the room. And somewhere in the silence between choices, you realize he's not here to take you. He's here to see what you'll become. The silhouette in the doorway doesn't move. It simply waits, like a punctuation mark at the end of a sentence you haven't decided how to read yet. You tighten your grip on the bell still warm, still vibrating softly like it's alive and listening. You don't speak. Neither does he. The fire's gone, the mirror's gone, and you suddenly become aware that every sound, every creak, whistle of wind, and even the steady beat of your own hearth has gone mute. It's not silence, it's expectation. In old Moravian villages, there's a lesser-known version of the Krampus tale. In this one, Krampus doesn't punish with chains or sacks or beatings. He shows up when someone lies to themselves. A single lie, a quiet one. I'm fine. I'm not scared. I don't believe in any of this. When the lie is spoken, Krampus appears, not to drag you away, but to place a truth in your path. A truth you can't avoid, a choice you can't refuse. And once the choice is made, the lie becomes permanent, a part of you. Unless you face it, the figure steps into the room. You step back, only once. Your spine meets the cold edge of the bedpost. And in that moment, everything becomes incredibly clear. The mask, the coal, the birch, the bells, they weren't threats. They were signs, each one a piece of a puzzle. A story being written not about Krampus, but about you. Because Krampus doesn't exist to terrorize the wicked. He exists to reveal the parts of ourselves we'd rather leave in shadow. And he never arrives unless you've already summoned him. In certain regions of Poland, there's a belief that Krampus only visits those who've seen him before. Not in this Lefano, in dreams, in stories, in moments of doubt. You don't meet Krampus. You remember him. And the longer you try to forget, the louder his bells become. He stops just a few feet from you. You can see more now, though, not clearly. The horns curve like black branches in a winter forest. His body is massive, cloaked in darkness, the texture of old wood and dried moss. His eyes are like embers caught in ash smoldering, patient, awake. But it's the sack slung over his shoulder that draws your gaze. It writhes, not violently, just enough, as if it's full of questions, or regrets, or both. They say that what Krampus carries in his sack isn't always naughty children. Sometimes, it's pieces of forgotten lives, laughter that died out, secrets whispered too late, promises broken so long ago no one remembers them but him. And sometimes, just sometimes, he offers them back, if you're willing to pay the cost. The bell in your hand grows heavier. You glance down. It's no longer metal. It's bone, etched with tiny symbols runes you don't recognize, but somehow understand. They feel like rules. One of them glows faintly red, and in your mind you hear a single phrase. You are being watched by what you've hidden. You don't know if the voice is his or your own. Maybe it doesn't matter. The air thickens. The walls breathe. Krampus leans slightly closer, not threatening, not cruel, just attentive. Waiting. You raise the bell. You don't ring it. You just lift it up to eye level and stare into its hollow mouth. You whisper, "I'm ready," and the bell disappears. Gone. No sound, no flash. Just gone. And when you look up again, Krampus is too. You spin, heart hammering, searching the room, but it's empty. The fire reignites, calmly. The mirror returns, intact. Your boots untouched. The coal back by the hearth, as if nothing ever happened. Except, the bed has been made, and on the pillow lies a small card. A name written in careful black ink. Yours. In a quiet corner of Austria, there's an old family that keeps a journal dating back generations. Each year, on Krampusnacht, they open it to the latest page, and there, they find a list of names. Never written by anyone in the family. Always correct. The names of people who came to terms with something they were running from. Names of people who will not be visited again. Not by Krampus. Not in this life. Because once you've seen him for what he truly is, you carry him with you. Not as a curse. As a mirror. You stare at the card on the pillow, your name scrawled across it in looping ink, the kind used by candlelight in a time before yours. You don't remember writing it. You don't remember anyone else being here long enough to do so. But there it is, firm, unmistakable, and it doesn't frighten you. Not exactly. There's a lesser-known alpine belief quietly passed down in places with too much snow and not enough sun about the bell that comes too late. Unlike the warnings that arrive before Krampus appears, this bell is different. It doesn't signal danger. It doesn't ask for permission. It tolls after the visit. Once, softly, as a final note, a signature, and only the one who heard the bells all night can hear it. You wait. Nothing happens. You breathe in, out, and then just as you close your eyes, ding, far away, muffled by miles and mountains and memory, but real and final. Krampus is gone, but not really. He's never fully gone, because now that you've seen him, now that you've felt the choices scrape across your ribs like old guilt, you're changed. You lie down in the bed again, unsure how much time has passed. The fire glows a soft amber, the air has warmed, but the shadows still move a little too much. Just a little, like they know you're watching now. In Romania, there's a strange addendum to the Krampus mython not found in most tellings. They believe there is a second sack he carries, not for the disobedient, but for the watchers, people who become too curious, too observant, too aware. This second sack is said to be woven from long-forgotten dreams and sealed with silence. If you ever see it, you're already in it. Not as a prisoner. As a participant, the innkeeper knocks in the morning. You answer without hesitation. He looks at you like he knows. Not everything, but something. You nod. He nods. And that's enough. He sets a small breakfast tray by your door bread, butter, tea, and walks away without a word. On the tray is a napkin, a symbol scrawled in ink, a horn, a bell, a flame. Beneath it, 4 words. You pass the test. Outside, the snow is falling gently now, not angry, not wild, like the storm that began last night never really happened. Or perhaps it did, but only for those who were meant to feel it. You dress, pack your things, and step out into the white. Everything looks the same, but you know better now. There's an obscure theory that Krampus is older than St. Nicholas. Far older. Some say he existed before names, before holidays, before language. Back when survival wasn't given, was earned. He was the cold reminder, the balancing force. Wherever there is kindness without consequence, Krampus walks. Not as an enemy, as a shadow, because without shadow, light has no weight. You pass the chapel on your way out of the village. Its steeple rises above the frostbitten trees. A soft bell tolls in the tower midday, harmless. But you still pause, just for a second, and in that silence, you hear a second bell. Not from the chapel, from the woods. Deeper, lower, softer. You smile. You keep walking, because now you understand something few ever do. Krampus doesn't come to haunt you. He comes to see you, to find out if you're honest with yourself, to remind you what fear feels like when it wears a face you know you've earned. And when he leaves, he doesn't take your name. He gives it back. At the edge of the forest, you glance behind you one last time. In the snow, just barely visible under a thick patch of pine needles, are 2 prints. Hoofed, deep, still warm. You don't touch them. You don't need to. You already carry your mark. But now, it doesn't weigh you down. It steadies you, like the sound of bells in the distance, like the flicker of fire on a long winter night, like the soft scrape of chains that don't drag anymore. You leave the village behind, the winding path beneath your boots, a ribbon of frost curling into the trees. The snow is falling with a hush now, gentle flakes landing on your shoulders like the forest is trying to bury the night before in softness. But you know better than to think that means it's over. Nothing about Krampus is ever truly over. There's a tale from a mountain town in Bavaria. A child disappeared on Krampusnacht. The only trace, a single hoofprint in the snow, and a wooden mask nailed to the barn door. The parents wept, prayed, and swore they'd never let the fire burn out early again. But a year later, just before midnight, the door creaked open and the child walked in. Different. Older, though only a year had passed. Eyes darker. Smiling. He placed a bell on the mantel and went to bed. He never spoke of where he'd gone. And he never feared anything again. You pause under a tree to catch your breath. The pine branches arch above you like the ribs of a giant creature long turned to bark and needles. In the stillness, you can hear the forest breathe. Not wind, breathing. You close your eyes, and somewhere inside the silence, you sense it again, that ancient awareness. Not watching you, but waiting. For what, you're not sure. But it knows you now. And in a strange way, that feels like safety. Back when the Krampus legend first wound its way through the Alps, people feared the forest more than they feared any beast. The woods were where children disappeared, where winter dragged its claws, where voices echoed that didn't belong to anyone still living. Krampus became the shape they gave their fear, the sound in the dark, the reason for a closed shutter or a whispered prayer. But in another interpretation, one almost entirely forgotten, Krampus is described not as a demon, but as a guardian, the last to stand between a soul and its worst self. Not evil, but necessary. The boundary between indulgence and discipline, between chaos and order, between what we are and what we could become if left unchecked. As you walk, the forest thickens, the path narrows, the trees lean closer together, branches nodding above to dim the pale light, and still you go on, not hurried, not hesitant, because the fear has changed. It's not behind you anymore. It walks beside you. Like an old companion you finally learn to name. In the Sankt Johann region, old mothers used to leave out bowls of milk laced with honey and ash on Krampusnacht to appease the beast, but to thank him. Thank him for taking away the lies, the weakness, the spoiled, the bitter, the cruel, not as punishment, as mercy. Let him carry their shadows, they would whisper, so our children can grow toward the light. Your fingers are cold, but you don't shiver. The mask may be gone, the coal left behind, but something still clings to you. A feeling. Like being marked not for death, but for awareness. And that's far heavier. You look at your reflection in a frozen stream as you cross it just for a moment. And there he is again. Behind you, his horns reaching into the treetops, his eyes still ember red. But he doesn't move. Neither do you. Because now you know he only shows himself when you're on the verge of forgetting. He's not there to take you. He's there to remind you. Some say Krampus only returns once. One final visit. Not to punish, not to test, but to offer a branch, a bell, a bundle of birch, a choice. Take it, and you carry the memory forever. Refuse it, and you lose the lesson. People who've seen that second visit walk differently, speak differently. They don't raise their voices. They don't break promises. They light their fires early and never let them go out too soon. They tell stories at night, just loud enough for others to hear, but quiet enough that Krampus knows they haven't forgotten. As you crest a ridge, the forest opens. Ahead lies the road again. Civilization, but the feeling doesn't lift. It follows, as steady as your shadow, not heavy, just present, like the weight of truth, or the hush before the first bell rings again. The road is silent as you step onto it, a long stretch of snow-packed earth that winds back toward the world. No tire tracks, no footprints, just you, and the faint sound of bells still lingering somewhere in the trees. Not behind you, not ahead, just around, like an echo that doesn't know where to go. In small alpine churches, tucked into valleys no one visits in the spring, you'll sometimes find a strange carving above the doorway. Two figures. One is St. Nicholas, hand outstretched, smiling. The other is Krampus, standing behind him, not chained, not snarling, just watching, as if to say, reward means nothing without the fear of loss. They're not enemies. They're partners. And somewhere along the path, they always trade places. You follow the road for what feels like hours. Snow crunches beneath your feet with that soft, satisfying hush. The sky is a thick quilt of gray above, and the pine trees watch from either side like tall, ancient witnesses. You should feel alone, but you don't, because once you've met Krampus, true solitude becomes impossible. Not because he haunts you, but because he remains, like scent clinging to fabric, like warmth left in a chair, like the knowledge of what you've survived. There's an obscure Croatian legend that Krampus doesn't live in the forest at all. He lives in your house. He hides in the rafters, behind the door that never opens. In the attic, no one's cleaned in decades. He curls himself around the places where guilt accumulates. He feeds off forgotten arguments, broken toys, silent tears. And once a year, he stretches awake, unfolds himself from the corners, and checks your name, just to see what kind of person you've become. As the path curves, you see it, a small wooden sign buried to its neck in snow. It reads, "Welcome back." 2 words, no town name, no directions. But somehow, it's the most honest greeting you've ever received. Like the forest is exhaling you now. Like the trial is over. You approach a cabin, not yours, not anyone's you recognize, but the windows are glowing with firelight. You knock once, expecting nothing, but the door opens. No one's there, just a table with a place already set. A bowl of soup, a chair by the fire, a blanket folded at the foot of a bed, and resting on the pillow, a small charm carved from dark wood. A figure, not quite human, not quite beast. Its face is a blend of familiarity and fear. You don't need to ask what it is. You already know. It's a token, a thank you. From him. In northern Slovenia, families pass down hand-carved Krampus tokens to the eldest child each generation. But they aren't warnings. They're reminders. The stories say that anyone who carries the token can speak a single truth once per year, and no one can argue against it. That's the gift. Not protection, not power. Clarity. You set your bag down and wrap yourself in the blanket. The warmth is immediate, deep, honest. Outside, the snow begins again. And from deep in the woods, one final bell. Soft, resolved, You close your eyes, and for the first time since the knocking, the bells, the mask, and the fire, you dream, but not of monsters. You dream of choices, of moments that could have gone wrong but didn't, of the you that could have given in but held fast. And in the center of that dream stands Krampus, still, watching, and this time, he nods, just once, then turns to walk away. Morning comes slowly, pouring through the window like warm honey over snowdrifts. The fire has died down to a soft, steady glow. You're still wrapped in the blanket, and beside you on the nightstand rests the wooden charm, still grinning faintly, still carved with hands you'll never meet. But the fear is gone, not vanished, transformed, into something steadier, heavier, like stone beneath your thoughts. You rise, and the floor creaks, just once, like the house is aware of your movement, approving, even. In a forgotten village nestled at the edge of the Black Forest, there's a peculiar tradition. Children leave their shoes out like most do on St. Nicholas Eve, but not empty. They place notes inside, not lists of what they want, but confessions, tiny truths. Sometimes I lie. I broke the lamp and blamed the dog. I think mean thoughts about my sister. These notes are never read by parents. They're for Krampus, because the people there believe that admitting the flaw lessens the punishment. That honesty, even whispered, is a kind of armor. You eat the soup that was left for you. It's still warm, still flavored with something familiar and grounding. As you eat, you think about the notes, what you would have written if you'd known. But maybe your silence was part of the test. Maybe being confronted without warning was the point. Krampus doesn't come for rehearsed apologies. He comes to see if you'll flinch. The wooden charm feels warm when you pick it up, heavier now. You turn it over and find something carved on the back. Just one word, remember. No signature, no flair. Just that. It's all he ever asks, really. You leave the cabin behind. The air outside is crisp, clean, full of the sharp edge that only winter mornings hold. The path is clear. The trees no longer whisper threats but rustle softly, like they're turning pages in a story only they can read. And far above, the clouds part to let through a sliver of sun. You smile, because somehow, it feels like he allowed it. Just this once. Some say Krampus isn't a being at all. Not a spirit, not a legend, not even a myth, but a season, a time that comes without date or warning, curling up through the cracks in your life like frost under the door. He arrives when you're tired of pretending, when you've buried something too deep, when a part of you needs to be shaken, held accountable, or forgiven. And when he leaves, he doesn't take anything. He just shows you what's already been with you all along. As you make your way back to civilization, you pass the old chapel again. This time, you stop. Something draws you in. The doors creak open without effort. Dust hangs in the sunbeams like glittering cobwebs. Wooden pews sit crooked with age. And at the far end, where an altar once stood, you see it. A single black bell, hanging from a rafter. Not polished, not clean. Just waiting. You don't touch it. You simply nod. A quiet gesture of recognition. And as you turn to leave, the bell sways gently on its rope. Not from wind, but from acknowledgement. In some old monasteries, monks used to ring a bell at the end of each year, not for prayer, not for ceremony, but to mark what was survived. One ring for each soul still present, one ring for the lessons learned, and one final ring for the unknown that still lay ahead. 3 bells, not to summon anything, but to remember everything. You step back outside. The path is brighter now, more certain. There's no more snow in your boots, no more ash on your coat, only the weight of the charm in your pocket, and the certainty that some truths, once faced, never leave you unchanged. You don't hear the bells anymore, but every so often, you hum them, just under your breath, a rhythm only you know. The town greets you like a place you've never truly seen before. Same buildings, same crooked fences and hand-painted signs, but everything feels slightly altered. Not because it changed because you did. The shopkeeper smiles more warmly. The inn's door doesn't creak anymore. Even the air feels lighter. It's almost like nothing happened. But that's the thing about nights like Krampusnacht. They don't leave behind wreckage or scars. They leave behind awareness. There's a folktale from Liechtenstein, rarely told outside whispered pub corners and late-night kitchen tables. It claims that people marked by Krampus can sense others who've met him, too. They don't share details. They don't need to. One glance, and both parties know. They saw something. They faced something. They chose something. It's not a bond. It's a mirror. And those who recognize it tend to keep their fires burning longer in winter. Just in case. You pass a boy outside the bakery, face pressed against the frosty glass. He's watching the bread rise, eyes wide. He turns and sees you just for a moment and then looks quickly away. But not before you notice the carved charm tucked into his coat pocket. Not the same as yours, simpler, but unmistakable. You say nothing. He nods once, like he understands, and then he's gone. In parts of the Swiss Alps, there's a curious tradition where children carve their own Krampus totems in secret. If a child confesses their wrongdoing before Krampusnacht, they are allowed to bury the charm in the snow. Come spring, if the snow has melted and the charm is still there, they are considered forgiven. If it's gone, the family doesn't speak of it. Only the child knows what that means. You reach the edge of the village where the woods begin again, not the same stretch you walked through, but forest all the same. And as you stand there, something compels you to look back. The town looks peaceful, alive. But beyond that, it feels watched. Not in a threatening way, more like a guardian keeping its eyes open. The same way a parent watches a child walking toward independence-loving, distant, and never fully at rest. You smile. You understand. Later that evening, as you sit in a quiet room by another fire your own, this time you take out the charm and place it beside your mug. You stare into the flames, not expecting anything, but feeling something. And for a moment, the fire crackles in a way that sounds oddly like laughter. Not mocking, not cruel. Warm. Approving. There's a theory that the reason Krampus wears chains isn't because he's bound to anything, but because we are. Bound to pride, to secrets, to fear. And each time he walks among us, he shakes those chains to remind us of the ones we still carry, the ones we must either break or learn to wear with grace. Because either way, they change us. You fall asleep by the fire that night and dream of snow that doesn't melt, bells that never rust, and a forest path that leads both forward and back at once. In the dream, Krampus is there, but he doesn't chase you. He walks beside you, and when you look at him, he looks just like you. Older, stronger, sharpened by choice. And when you wake, you remember it not as a nightmare, but as a story still being written. The next morning, you wake with the distinct sensation that something has shifted not outside, but inside. Like a door you didn't know was locked, has now creaked open just a bit, letting in the cold air and the memory of bells. The wooden charm rests on your nightstand, exactly where you left it, but now it has weight. Not physical heaviness, but the emotional kind. Like holding a photograph of someone you used to be afraid of until you understood them. In an out-of-the-way village near Salzburg, locals believe that Krampus doesn't truly vanish after Krampusnacht. They say he lingers nearby for 12 days, unseen but listening. During this time, you're not supposed to boast, curse, or speak ill of others. It's considered the final test. If you pass, the coming year is filled with clarity. If you fail, well, let's just say the next visit doesn't wait until next December. You move through the day with a sense of quiet reverence. People greet you, some with cheerful nods, others with long, thoughtful looks that last a beat too long. It feels like they know, or maybe they simply recognize something different in your eyes. There's a stillness to you now, a kind of unspoken truth humming beneath your skin, like a bell that no longer needs to ring to be heard. You find yourself walking the village perimeter again, as if retracing your own footsteps. Snow still falls, slow and sleepy, and the trees sway just slightly less like movement, more like memory. And there, tucked under a pine bough, half covered by frost, a second charm, not yours, someone else's. Smaller, worn smooth, the face carved into it is different longer horns, a deeper frown. But unmistakably Krampus. You leave it untouched. Some stories aren't yours to finish. In the ancient oral traditions of Hungary, there's a belief that Krampus can take on different appearances depending on who sees him. To one person, he's a beast with horns and chains. To another, he's a towering shadow with a sack full of whispering regrets. And to a few, he appears as someone familiar, a mentor, a parent, even a younger version of yourself. The shape he takes depends on what lesson you need most. And once you've seen him in that shape, you never forget it. That night, back by your fire, you notice something different in your reflection. Not in the mirror, those are normal again. But in the window, a flicker of horns, a glint of red. Not behind you, just beside your eyes, caught in the glass like a secret only you can see. You don't turn around. You don't need to, because he's not here to scare you anymore. He's here to remind you that the test may be over, but the choices never stop. Some say Krampus walks among us all year, silent and disguised, slipping into crowds, watching in mirrors, echoing in footsteps that don't quite match your own. He doesn't punish anymore, not unless he's invited. Not unless you drift too far from the version of yourself you were meant to grow into. And when that happens, you hear the bells again. You sit in the stillness and feel the weight of your journey, not as a burden, but as armor. The path you took, the forest you crossed, the knock you answered, the silence you withstood. And as you close your eyes, you wonder, how many others are walking this same road right now? How many others have met him? And how many never knew he was right beside them, all along? The days pass gently now. The snow thins, the air grows sharper, and the village settles into the deep exhale that follows every long winter storm. Life continues. But not for you in quite the same way. Because something inside you hums now. Not fear, not dread, but a kind of stillness, like the quiet after a storm, or the moment between breath and word. The charm never leaves your side. You don't wear it, don't flaunt it, but it's always nearby. Not as a trophy. As a reminder, there's a tale from a remote Tyrolean settlement where the people believe Krampus doesn't visit once a year, he visits once in your life. One encounter, one reckoning. If you survive it honestly, you never see him again. But if you lie to yourself after, if you pretend nothing happened, if you twist the memory to make yourself seem stronger or smarter, he comes back. Not to scare you, to correct you. You think often about that moment in the woods, the heavy footsteps, the mirrored self, the silence between the knocks. And you realize now you weren't in danger. You were in judgment, not from him, from yourself. Krampus just made it visible. He doesn't wield punishment. He holds up a mirror and waits to see what you'll do with it. If you turn away, he stays. If you look and keep looking, he leaves. Some nights you hear echoes, not bells exactly, but chimes. Wind through old wood, branches clicking together like loose teeth. The kind of sound that might be natural, or might not. You don't check. You don't need to, because the fear has become a guidepost. And Krampus? He's not a monster anymore. He's a boundary. He shows you where the edge Isand trusts you not to fall. There's a lesser-known Germanic variant of the legend where Krampus doesn't visit the guilty at all. He visits the tempted. Those standing at the threshold, one wrong step from becoming someone else. He doesn't arrive with chains in that version. He brings a mirror. And a question, is this really the version of yourself you want to be? If the answer is no, he leaves. If the answer is yes, he leaves something behind. A bell. And a long, slow silence that follows you forever. The next time you're in the woods, it's spring. Snowdrops bloom like tiny ghosts between thawing roots. The path is visible again, but softened, familiar. You walk slowly, and near the edge of the forest, under the pine where you first felt him watching, you see it. A mask. Carved from wood, bleached by winter, worn at the edges. It isn't the one you wore. It's older. Smaller. As if someone else left it there long ago, and now it's your turn to see it. You kneel beside it, but don't touch. Instead, you whisper, "Thank you." The trees do not respond, but the wind changes, just slightly. In parts of northern Austria, it's said that Krampus only truly disappears once his name is spoken aloud with gratitude. Most never think to do that. They fear him too deeply. But those who do, those who thank him, they're said to walk with lighter steps afterward. Not because they're unburdened, because they've owned their burden. You return home. Your real home this time. Different place, different walls. But the charm comes with you. You place it by the door, not hidden, not displayed, just there, waiting, watching, so that when you walk out into the world, you remember what it means to be seen. And when you come home again, you remember why you were spared. It's amazing how quiet the world becomes after Krampus leaves it. The noise of daily life, the clatter, the chatter, the hum of the ordinary never quite reaches the same volume again. You hear more in the silence now. A creak in the floorboard that feels like an old friend. The hush of wind curling around your windowsill. Even your own heartbeat, sometimes, when the house is especially still. You've begun to wonder if Krampus gave you more than a warning. Maybe he gave you clarity. In a patch of southern Germany, there's a legend few speak out loud. It tells of a hidden bell tower in the middle of a forest, invisible to the eye but felt by those who've met the beast. The story goes that every time a soul resists, their darkest urge chooses compassion instead of cruelty, truth instead of comfort. A bell rings in that hidden tower, but only they can hear it. And once they do, they're never truly lost again. You hear bells sometimes, not every day, but in strange moments, quiet victories, decisions no one witnesses but you. You let the stranger merge into traffic. You resist the urge to lie when it would have been easier. You hold your tongue in an argument you could have won, but didn't need to. Ding. It's not always a sound. Sometimes it's a feeling, like warm breath against the nape of your neck, but softer, like the moment before snowfall, like being seen and found worthy. You start telling the story, not often, not publicly, but here and there, over a fire, at a kitchen table, in a letter you'll never send. You don't describe Krampus in detail. You talk about choices, and bells, and cold that had nothing to do with temperature. People listen, some nod. A few look down at their hands like they're holding a memory they haven't quite unpacked yet. There's a fringe theory, whispered in small folklore circles, that Krampus exists only because we keep telling stories about him, that if we stopped, he'd vanish. But there's an older counter theory, more terrifying. It says he's always existed and the stories were his idea, so we wouldn't forget, so we'd keep him alive, because he knows what we try to ignore, that sometimes the thing we need most isn't comfort, it's confrontation. One evening, weeks later, you take a long walk past the outskirts of town. The snow has all but melted, replaced by wet soil and the first signs of spring. Buds on trees, birds returning, the smell of thawed pine. And there, near a tree you vaguely recognize, is something left behind. Another mask. Different from the last, more ornate. Eyes hollowed out deeper, horns longer, sharper. Not for you. Someone else must have left it here. You feel a strange kinship with them, whoever they were, wherever they are now. Because if you found this mask, maybe someone else found yours. In northern Bohemia, there's a saying passed down by firelight. Krampus does not follow. He walks ahead, waiting for you to catch up to the truth. That truth might take years, might take one long night, but it's never gone. It just waits beneath the snow, beneath the silence, beneath the versions of ourselves we're too afraid to meet. That night, you sit by the fire with a journal in your lap. You don't write your story, not exactly. You write a list, not of regrets, not of resolutions, just moments. Ones you survived, ones you changed, ones that nearly turned you into someone else but didn't. You read it back, and somewhere, far away, you think you hear it. Ding. The days stretch forward like a trail through soft, fog-gentle, quiet, a little blurred at the edges. The world no longer feels dangerous. Not because the danger is gone, but because you're aware of it now. And that awareness doesn't scare you anymore. It steadies you, like the first crunch of boots in snow or the cool touch of a doorknob you know you're brave enough to turn. There's a curious bit of Slovenian folklore that speaks of the second season of Krampus. Not a return of the beast, but the echo of his presence. According to this version, once a person has encountered Krampus, they enter a season of subtle tests. No horns, no chains, no bells, just a slow, quiet series of moral crossroads. How you treat the forgotten, how you carry your own name, Whether you light someone else's path without asking for credit, each choice is a thread. And those threads weave the garment you wear when he comes again. You find yourself seeking out the silence more often now, not avoiding the world, but listening to it. Observing how people move, how they justify their sharp edges, how often they look over their shoulders when they think no one's watching. You notice these things without judgment, because you remember what it felt like to be on the edge of your own worst decision, and to be seen in that moment, and to be offered a way back. One night, as you're lighting your fireplace, something shifts in the chimney, a soft thud, not loud, not alarming, just present. You investigate, and there, nestled in a fold of soot, is something small. A scrap of parchment, curled at the corners, edges singed, no words on it, just a symbol. 3 strokes, a bell, a horn, a flame. You don't flinch. You fold the paper and place it beside your charm. Some messages don't need explanations. They're not warnings. They're acknowledgments. In an obscure Tyrolean version of the myth, Krampus is said to return not to the same person, but the same house once every 20 years. They say it's not about punishing whoever lives there. It's about remembering the energy that lingered in that space. A karmic echo. And in that echo, his presence becomes a kind of ritual. The clearing of stale shadows, the uprooting of old secrets, the tending of spiritual embers. You sit outside under the stars that night, wrapped in a blanket, watching your breath rise like steam prayers into the blackness. You feel him, not near, not watching, but aware, as if somewhere, on a ridge you'll never see, he stands with folded arms, watching your path unfold like parchment beneath your feet. Not judging it, just witnessing it. And you wonder if that's what he always was. Not an enemy, but a memory. Alive, sharp, cold, necessary. You remember now the moment he looked at you. Not with anger, not with hunger, but with recognition. As if he saw not only who you are, but who you were afraid of becoming. And in that moment, gave you a chance. Not to run, to choose. That's the scariest part, isn't it? Not the horns, not the sack, not the icy night or the sound of bells in the dark, but the quiet, paralyzing realization that you were always the one holding the match. And he was simply the mirror. You let that thought sit with you, long into the night, until the fire burns down to coals, until the shadows no longer feel like threats, but like hands pressed against glass. And in the stillness, you hear it again. Not a bell, not a whisper, just the sound of your own breath, and the certainty that it still belongs to you. Winter fades slowly, as if reluctant to loosen its grip. The snow becomes slush, the wind grows milder, and the village begins to move again, boots in mud, laughter through open windows, the smell of pine giving way to thawed earth and chimney soot. But the season of Krampus doesn't fully leave you, not because it's stuck, because it's settled, inside, like an ember tucked into the lining of your thoughts, warming not burning. There's a small chapel in a nearly forgotten Austrian hamlet where the villagers keep a bell hanging above the entrance not to ring for prayer, but to listen. They say once a year, during the week after the last frost, if you sit in total silence, you can hear the bell sway without wind, a soft, hollow echo, not loud, but deep, and those who hear it, they don't speak of it. They just stand a little taller afterward. You find yourself walking more these days, no destination, just forward motion, into the woods, along ridges, across frozen fields now softening under a gentler sun. One morning, you spot an animal print beside your own in the thawing path. A hoof, not quite deer, not quite goat, one step beside yours, and then it vanishes. No other prints around it, just the suggestion of company you never noticed. In Romanian folklore, Krampus has a Kuzina spirit of reflection named Spinzerici. He carries no sack, no whip, no chains, just a single mirror. It's said that after Krampus visits a soul and leaves them changed, Spinzerici comes months later and shows them a reflection of who they could have been had they made the opposite choice. Most weep, some smile, but all remember. Back in your home, you sit by the window one night and light a candle. Not for light, not for warmth. For invitation? Not to summon Krampus, those days are behind you, but to signal to yourself that you remember. And you still welcome the lesson. Even now, especially now, you begin noticing things in others, too. A flicker of hesitation in someone's eyes. The way a neighbor grips their keys tighter when walking home. The pause someone takes before snapping at a stranger. You don't say anything. But deep down, you wonder, have they met him too? A whispered variation from rural Slovakia claims that Krampus can only enter your story if you've forgotten your own. That's his invitation. Forget who you are. Forget what you stood for. Forget your values, your boundaries, your softness. And he appears not to punish, but to remind. You didn't forget, not fully. And now, because of that, he's left you something few ever receive. Presence. You reach for the wooden charm again that evening. You trace its edges. You feel where time has softened it, where your fingers have worn grooves into its crooked smile and twisted horns. You whisper a simple word. Still. Still here. Still choosing. Still aware. The silence afterward is kind, familiar. Some believe the Krampus tale is meant for children, but those who've met him, truly met him, know the story isn't a warning for the young. It's a mirror for the grown. Because childhood fears are simple. Adulthood asks more of you. And Krampus? He's just the old friend who steps out of the dark and asks, "Are you still who you said you'd be?" And waits. Not with anger, but with expectation. Spring has nearly bloomed into full shape now. The frost no longer clings to windows, and the ground underfoot has softened to a gentle give. You hear birds again, and the air carries the distant sound of laughter, carefree, unaware, untouched. But you still carry the quiet. Not as a burden. As a companion, it walks with you now, not behind or ahead, but beside. And in that stillness, you begin to understand something deeper. Krampus never truly leaves. He just learns to trust you. There's a lesser-known legend from the Bavarian Alps that speaks of Der Schattenfreund, the shadow friend. He is Krampus's gentler half, said to appear in dreams, not to punish but to guide. Children who survive their Krampusnacht without breaking are said to dream of Der Schattenfreund for the rest of their lives. In the dreams, he never speaks. He simply walks with them through forests that never end. And in these dreams, the children are never afraid, because now they know how to walk in the dark. One evening, after a long day of work and weather and words, you find yourself returning to that same patch of woods, not to search, to remember. The air is thick with budding pine. The earth carries the last wet echoes of winter. And at the bend in the trail, where two paths fork and no signs point the way, you see something resting on a stump, a bundle of twine. Wrapped around it is a slip of fabric herd, frayed and faintly familiar. You don't pick it up. You just stand there, the way one stands at a gravesite, not with grief, with acknowledgement. There's an obscure variant of the myth in Lithuania that says Krampus leaves behind pieces of himself wherever he visits, not bones or hair or footprints, but reminders. A bit of horn, a broken bell, a strip of cloak. It's said that those who find them are meant to keep watch not over others, but over the space where the lesson occurred, to become caretakers of awareness, guardians of the line between impulse and integrity. You return home, the image of the red cloth still fresh in your mind. That night, you dream. It's not vivid, not frightening, just quiet. You walk a narrow trail between two worlds now on one side, grass on the other, and ahead of you, a figure walks. Not Krampus, not Der Schattenfreund, just someone wearing your face, but older, wiser, a version of you who never turned away from the truth. They don't speak. They simply turn and nod, as if to say, "You're getting closer." When you wake, the air is warmer, lighter, and your first thought isn't of the dream. It's of the moment years from now when you'll be telling someone else this story. Maybe not the whole thing, maybe not the horns or the sack or the bells, but the feeling, that electric stillness, that breathless awareness, that one night where everything went silent and you finally heard yourself. In pockets of southern Austria, families pass down Krampusbücher, small leather-bound journals where each generation writes about the year they first felt him watching. No drawings, no names, just entries like, I almost said something cruel. I didn't. I was going to walk away. I turned back instead. I told the truth today. Small moments, but each one a bell. Each one a thread in the garment we wear through winter. Each one a reason he hasn't come back. You sit at your desk that night and open a blank page. You don't write a story. You write a list of moments you got it right. Just a few, but they matter. You read them back, and your heart slows. The fire crackles gently behind you, and for the first time in a long time, you realize you're not afraid of the dark anymore. The sky is a softer shade of blue now, brushed with the pale pink of early mornings and the golden hush of longer afternoons. Spring has fully arrived, and still you carry the cold. Not in your bones, in your memory, but it's no longer chilling. It's anchoring. You find yourself revisiting certain places more often. The edge of the woods, the bend in the road where the air shifts, that one crooked fence post you never noticed before, now too peculiar to ignore. They aren't haunted. They're marked. By you. By who you were when you first passed them and who you've become since. In a rare Carpathian variation of the Krampus legend, there is said to be a final trial called the Return Path. It doesn't happen during Krampusnacht. It happens long after, months or even years after the initial encounter. It comes not with bells or chains, but with a choice. You're offered something tempting, something easy, something selfish, and if you take it without reflection, the beast returns, not to punish, to ask, "Did you forget?" One quiet afternoon, you find an old letter tucked inside a book, not one you remember writing. The handwriting is yours, but looser, unsteady, like it came from a younger version of yourself. It says, "If I ever forget, please remind me who I was before the snow." You stare at the words for a long time, and you whisper, "I won't forget." A whisper from northern Italy says that Krampus only appears to those standing at the pivot, that moment of before and after. The second the soul starts to slip, not into darkness but into indifference. And once you meet him, he stays in your periphery forever, never walking beside you, just waiting at each fork in the path to see who you become. You visit the chapel one more time. The bell is still there, but something's different now. There's a small mark etched into the wood beneath it, so faint you nearly miss it. A single word, enough. No one claims it. No one admits to carving it. But you understand. You face the worst. You've seen yourself through his eyes. And now, you are enough. Not because you're perfect, because you chose not to be worse. That evening, as you stir a pot of soup and light a candle, you realize something strange. You miss him, not the fear, not the shadow, not the sound of hooves in the snow, but the clarity, the sharpness of that night, the way the cold carved out your thoughts, the way your heartbeat felt like truth. Some say Krampus doesn't visit us. He visits the part of us that's been waiting to wake up. He doesn't knock on doors. He knocks on walls, the ones we build around the truth. And once those walls crack, he steps back and lets the truth do the rest. You don't light a fire that night. You sit in the dark, not to summon him, just to remember how still it felt, how honest, how alive. The days feel longer now, not just because of the sun, but because you're more present for each one. You notice things, the way birds tilt their heads when they sing, the way wind teases the branches before letting them go, the quiet sighs of a home settling at night. You are not haunted. You are awake. And Krampus, if he's anywhere at all, is no longer looming. He's simply watching, not to judge, but to witness. In a hushed tale from an alpine monastery, the monks speak of the year of silence. It's believed that every person marked by Krampus will eventually face one calendar year where nothing happens. No dreams, no knocks, no signs. And during that time, the true test occurs not in fear or survival, but in consistency. Do you still walk with integrity? Do you still speak gently when no one's watching? Do you still listen to your conscience when the echoes are faint? That year, they say, decides everything. You suspect your year of silence has begun. No bells, no sightings, no dreams. Just days. Simple, steady, earned days. It's less exciting than you expected, but far more beautiful. You start collecting things, Not souvenirs, not tokens of fear. Reminders. A pine cone from that winter trail. A thread of red fabric now tied to your keychain. A piece of wood you carved into a tiny, crooked horn. They're not protection. They're promises. To stay kind. To stay awake. To stay you. There's a curious French take on Krampus, almost never told outside tiny villages along the Jura Mountains. In their version, he appears once to everyone. Just once. You might not see him. You might not know it's him. But later, in hindsight, you'll remember a moment that could have changed you for the worse and didn't. And that moment, that was him. No horns. No chains. Just presence. You've stopped telling the story now. Not because it's faded, because you no longer need to prove it happened. You feel it in the way you answer difficult questions, in the restraint that lives just behind your tongue, in the compassion you offer even when no one's keeping score. He's not your enemy. He never was. He was the weather before the bloom, the howl before the hush, the truth before the choice. You see a child one day, near the town square, whispering something into a hollowed-out bell. She shakes it 3 times, then runs away giggling. You ask the vendor what she was doing. He shrugs. She says if you tell the bell a secret you're ashamed of, Krampus won't have to find you. You smile. Smart kid. You go home and take out your own charm one last time. It's worn now, smoothed by time. The edges aren't sharp anymore. The frown has softened, somehow, even though it hasn't moved. You press your thumb into its center and close your eyes. And in the darkness, you speak a truth you've never said aloud. Not a sin, not a confession, just something real. And when you open your eyes, you're still alone, but something is listening. You begin to forget what he looked like. Not entirely, not the feeling of him, but the details blur. Were his horns twisted or smooth? Was his fur matted or clean? Did he growl or simply breathe? You can't say, and oddly enough, that comforts you. Because the details were never what mattered. It was the choice. There's an obscure belief whispered in parts of Lower Saxony that Krampus doesn't live in forests or caves or the mountains at all. He lives in moments. Tiny, fleeting windows where your true self flickers in and out of focus. You can't see him. You can't prepare. But afterward, when the moment's passed and your heart slows, you know, you passed. Or you didn't. And if you didn't, you might hear the sound of a distant bell. Just once. The seasons shift again. Buds burst into leaves. The trail you once walked under snow now pulses with green. The cold breath of winter replaced by sun-warmed bark and bees dancing through dandelions. Life has returned. So have you, but not as the same person. You don't flinch at shadows anymore. You study them. You've learned to ask different questions. Not, what's out there, but what's inside me that fears it? You hear laughter at a neighbor's bonfire. Someone retells the tale of Krampus and the old-fashioned wayhorns and chains and children in sacks. You chuckle softly into your drink. That's one version, but it's not yours. Yours never needed a sack, never needed fire. It just needed silence, and truth, and you. In a long-lost Scandinavian tale, there's a final phase to the Krampus journey, the third mask. It's not a mask he wears. It's one you do. They say those who have met him, truly faced him, eventually carry his symbol not in talismans or carvings, but in their actions. When they help someone without being asked, when they offer a warning instead of punishment, when they walk beside someone nearing a dangerous edge and say nothing, but stay. That's the third mask. Not of fear, of understanding. You find your way back to the forest one last time. Everything is blooming. The air is alive. But under the green, you sense it. The same trail, the same turn, the same weight in the soil where your fear once stood. You kneel. You don't speak. You just close your eyes and listen. To nothing. And in that silence, everything returns. The cold, the bells, the mirror, and then a hand. Not yours, not his, just a presence, a witness. Then it's gone, and you rise again. Later that night, you add one more line to your quiet journal. He was never coming for me. He was coming for the lie I was telling myself. Summer settles in, and with it, a stillness of a different kind. Not cold like winter's hush, not tense like the days after Krampusnacht, but a warm, slow quiet. Like the world is catching its breath after remembering something difficult. You do too. You breathe more deeply, speak more softly, smile for no reason other than knowing who you are now. You survived the winter, but more importantly, you listened to it. In a forgotten Swiss folktale, Krampus is said to leave behind a single thread of his cloak in the homes he visits, invisible unless you're looking with the right kind of eyes. The elders say it weaves itself into the fibers of your being, not to control you, to anchor you. So when you reach for cruelty, it tugs gently. When you edge toward dishonesty, it hums low. And when you choose differently, it goes silent again. Not praise, not punishment, just presence. You feel it sometimes, that invisible thread, like a pull behind your ribs when you're tempted to look away from someone who needs help, when you're tempted to speak harshly just to win an argument, when you're tempted to forget the snow, and in that pause just long enough to decide you remember him. Not as a monster, but as the cold that woke you up. You start noticing more people who carry it too. They speak carefully. They make space. They move like they've stood in a dark forest and found their way back, not quickly, but honestly. You don't ask. You don't need to. You simply nod as you pass. Like travelers who've crossed the same hidden river and recognize the sound of water in each other's footsteps. In one obscure Belgian variation, they say Krampus doesn't disappear after winter. He simply melts, becomes part of the earth. The wind, the crackling fire, and when the year turns cold again, he doesn't return to you. He returns through you, in every kind choice, in every held tongue, in every brave moment when fear could have won and didn't. You return home after a walk and find a bundle left on your porch, wrapped in waxed cloth. No note. Inside, a single bell. Small, iron, silent. You lift it to your ear. It doesn't ring, but you hear something anyway. Not sound, memory. You hang it by your door, not as a warning, as a promise to yourself, to the version of you who sat in the snow and kept breathing, to the version of you who still listens in silence, to the version of you who knows that fear is not failure. It's the invitation. That night, for the first time in many seasons, you sleep deeply. No dreams, no echoes, no hooves in the dark, just warmth, and the knowledge that if he ever comes again, you won't be afraid. Not because you're stronger, but because you'll know why he's there, and you'll welcome him like an old friend. The year winds toward its close again, and with it comes the faintest memory of frost on the wind. You notice it one morning, just a curl of cold beneath your coat collar, a shimmer of breath in the air before the sun fully rises. It doesn't frighten you. It grounds you, because you remember what winter once meant. And now, it means something more. You hear talk again, and the village children whispering about Krampus under their breath, daring each other to walk into the woods after dark, laughing too loud to hide the little flicker of fear behind their eyes. It's tradition now, ritual, but for you, it's no longer a story. It's a threshold you've already crossed. And the footprints you left in the snow, they haven't faded. Not to you. There's a final version of the legend told only among the oldest families in a hidden alpine pass. They say Krampus doesn't come back for those he's marked with mercy. He waits instead, at the very end of your life, not to take you, to greet you, and walk the last steps beside you, not as monster, not as judge, but as witness, because he saw you when you could have broken and didn't. And that kind of strength, it earns you a companion at the edge of the dark. You sit alone one night, candle flickering low. The snow has just begun to fall again, quiet and slow and patient. You feel the silence before you hear it. Then, just faintly, a knock. Not at the door, not even in the room, just inside, like the echo of something you once feared but no longer do. You close your eyes and smile. He's not coming for you. He's just reminding you he was here. And so are you. You light the last candle of the season. The charm sits beside it. The bell still hangs by the door. The journal remains tucked away with a single page left blank. You're not afraid of finishing it. Because the story doesn't end when the pages do. It ends in how you live, how you choose, and how you walk through each winter with open eyes. They say Krampus is a beast, a punisher, a tormentor. But now you know the truth. He's a question, not an answer. A pause, not a command. A breath in the cold that asks, will you be better than your worst instinct? And if your answer is yes, he disappears, but never entirely, because now he lives in you. So now, as the fire dwindles and the night grows still, you pull the blanket a little tighter around your shoulders. Let the cold stay outside the window, where it belongs. You're safe now. The footsteps have faded. The bells have gone quiet. And the snow only falls to decorate, not to threaten. You've seen the face behind the mask. And maybe it wasn't his face that frightened you most. Maybe it was your own reflection, raw, honest, unblinking. But now you see it clearly. And it doesn't scare you anymore. Because you know who you are when the snow falls. When the silence presses in. When no one else is watching. You're still you. Still choosing kindness. Still walking the narrow path through the dark. And somewhere, far off, in a forest no map can name, a figure with horns and a crooked grin smiles softly and turns away. His work here is done, for now, so breathe deeply. Feel the weight of the blanket, the hush of the world, the comfort of knowing that what once frightened you now lives only as a quiet memory. Not forgotten, just transformed. The cold has passed. The night is yours, and the story will sleep too.